Okay, today we're going to be talking about fungi and also single-celled organisms. So we learned when we were looking at classification in different kingdoms that fungi is its own kingdom. It's separate, it's not a plant, it's a completely separate type of organism. The kingdom of fungi include all the kind of mushrooms that you would see growing, whether they be the little kind of typical mushroom shaped or bracket fungi, all these different things that are classified as mushrooms, but also mold. So any mold, from the mold that you get on moldy bread to decaying, like moldy fruit that's gone bad in your fruit bowl, to if you've ever seen a house that has a mold problem, or that black mold that you see sometimes beside or round about sinks or baths. All these are types of fungi. Mold is also yeast, so the yeast that you use to make bread, or the yeast that's involved in the brewing of beer and other alcoholic beverages. All these are classified as fungi. The cells in fungi have different organelles than those that are in plants or animals, so there's a fundamental difference. The role fungi play in the ecosystem is also unique. We look at fungi as being decomposers. So they play an important role in our ecosystems as kind of recyclers. So when you see fungi growing on a log, so you've got this fungi here on this log, these fungi will be breaking down that organic matter into its constituent nutrients, so that can be reabsorbed by other plants through their root systems. So they're really important for this kind of recycling of the nutrients and play that vital role in our ecosystem. They do the same with animals. If you've got a decaying animal in the forest, there will be fungal organisms within that the body of that decaying creature, breaking that animal down into its constituent parts. Fungi they're not consuming food like animals do. They're not making food like plants. They're that role of decomposers. They also reproduce differently. They reproduce asexually, so you don't have two parents, like a mother and a father, mushroom with like animals do, or like with plants, you don't have these two male and female gametes that fuse together. Fungi release spores, and when we see like mushrooms in the forest, like these or this one here, these bodies here, the kind of typical thing that we call a mushroom, is actually like a flowering body. It's from these that spores are released. Sometimes you find puffball mushrooms. They're like little white balls, and if you tap them, you'll see like the spores being released out the top. So the function of that part of the mushroom is simply for the releasing of those pores. The actual fungi itself, the majority of that fungi is underground. And we see here, if you look here, it's like these white root-like structures. These are called hyphae, and they join together to make a large network called a mycelium. This mycelium network is the actual fungi plant. They bury deep underground or into the thing that they're growing on, like a log, or inside the animal if they're breaking down animal matter. And it's the mycelium network which is the actual organism. They're releasing enzymes that break down that organic matter, and so it can be absorbed by the fungi or released into the soil. This is why if you have moldy bread, for example, you might just see a tiny little bit of mold on it, and you think, oh, just break it off and throw it away. Well, that mold that you're seeing on that piece of bread is actually this similar idea to this flowering body. But the mycelium network of that mold is going into the bread itself, and you're not getting rid of it. You don't know if you're getting rid of it by just pulling off that bit of moldy bread, because that the mycelium network of that mold could have penetrated deeper into that slice of bread. Likewise with fruit and such like. mycelium networks are something that there's an awful lot of study going into in biology. Biologists are studying them a lot. They're learning that these mycelium networks are essential to healthy ecosystems. Some mycelium networks are truly massive. The largest known organism on Earth is actually a fungus, and it's in the Oregon forest. And it covers, the mycelium network of this fungi covers 3.5 square miles. It is immense. And not all mycelium networks are immense, but the structures under the forest floor can go for quite a distance. And we're learning that trees use the mycelium networks to send signals to other trees. If a tree is under attack from an insect, for example, that tree will release a chemical signal. It'll go in through the root system into the mycelium network, and other trees around about can pick that signal up and then start producing chemicals that will make their leaves taste bitter, and so protecting their other trees against this attack on their fellow tree. Is absolutely fascinating, the work that's being done into mycelium networks and how the true level of interconnectedness within ecosystems. They are exceedingly important. Molds are important. Yeast is important. We use yeast in baking and brewing. Cheese making, again, is used with is a mold process. Some molds we can eat. If you've got blue cheese, that is mold, and we can eat it, and it's good for us. It will not harm us. However, some molds are really quite dangerous and can cause health problems. So you need to just be careful. Mold in your home, it can cause health problems as well. So like with so many things, there are good aspects and there's bad aspects. Some fungi are also parasitic. So some fungi, for example, ash dieback disease is a fungi which is attacking ash trees, and it kills them eventually. And this is an example of a parasitic fungi which is living on the living tree, the living organic matter, and actually will end up killing that tree. So there are the fungi are absolutely amazing, but you have this this other side of them as well. Let's talk about single-celled organisms. So this is the protista within the kingdoms of nature, and we think about them as being simple life forms. We didn't even know they existed until microscopes were developed in the 16th century, and even at that point they were very basic microscopes, and we couldn't really see the true complexity of these simple life forms and some of the smaller ones. So as the technology of microscopes were developed, this whole new world of microscopic life was opened up to biologists. We're going to look at two examples. The first one here is a plasmodium. This is not the nicest of single-celled organisms. This causes malaria. And malaria has caused millions, tens, hundreds of millions of deaths throughout history have been caused by this tiny little single-celled organism. It's carried by mosquitoes, and if a mosquito that is infected by the plasmodium bites you, and because mosquitoes take your blood, if you're infected by the plasmodium, that plasmodium will go into your liver, and the organelles down at the base of the plasmodium will hijack your liver cells and feed off the hemoglobin in your blood. And malaria makes you exceedingly unwell, and as I've already mentioned, results in death for a lot of people. In the third world and developing countries where there is not the medical, there's not the money for the drugs that can now actually treat it. So this is treatable now, and it's tragic that so many people are still dying of malaria today. The euglena is a waterborne single-celled organism. We can see here from this diagram it looks highly complex. When we mentioned the different kingdoms, we learned that protista sometimes make their own food and sometimes don't. So the plasmodium is feeding off the blood, the hemoglobin in its victim within their liver. The euglena is got chloroplasts, so can make their own food. This is a fascinating single-celled organism. It has this little tail called a flagellum. And down here we see this part here, this little orange body down here is a photoreceptor. So this picks up light levels. And so this euglena will move in the pond or whatever body of water it's in to where the light level is the highest, so that it can photosynthesize and maximize its efficiency in making food. So even though this is such a simple organism, there is a level of complexity here which is actually fascinating. Which brings us to this idea of irreducible complexity. This is a case study for creation. So as I've mentioned, we didn't really single-celled organisms were not even known about until the 16th century. And it's only really been in the last 100 years as microscope technology has advanced so that we can really see inside these tiny little organisms to the organelles that they contain. This, we mentioned the little euglena with its photoreceptor and its flagellum. So we're going to be thinking about this little area in this organism. Secular scientists argue that life has evolved from single-celled organisms through random selection. We see these highly complex worlds that are interconnected, so that the microscopic world is highly interconnected, but it has an impact on the macro world that we live in, that we can see and interact with. They're all interconnected. And so we're going to talk about this idea of irreducible complexity. Charles Darwin, who was the architect of the evolution of the species, said this: "If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down." So this is an idea of irreducible complexity. And this is where we see a structure or a system which is not just complex, but is complex in a specific way where every piece of that system has to be there and in the right place to function. So we're going to think about an idea, a man-made invention to help us wrap our head around this idea. So we're going to think about an electric motor. So electric motors are in washing machines, they're in hair dryers, they're in cars. Anything that rotates has an electric motor. And we've got a diagram of one here. So we've got the central shaft here, there's coils of wire, there's magnets in here, there's lots of moving parts, and each moving part has been specifically engineered and built to work together within this electric motor. If you remove any part of this motor, the motor will not work. If you take away the magnets, you don't have a motor. If you take away the central shaft here, you don't have a motor. Everything is required to work in the right place and in the right way for your motor to function. And this is the idea of something that is irreducibly complex. And the question is, do we see things like this within living creatures? And the answer is very definitely yes. And it's not just complex organisms like ourselves. We have many things in our own bodies that work, that are as complex as this. We see it even in these single-celled organisms. So this little euglena has, it's like a little motor right down here, and it rotates round and round and round and round, and it causes the flagellum to rotate so that it can move and propel this organism through the water. So it's this tiny little motor, And because of the power of modern microscopes, we're able to see the different parts that make up this little motor, and the fact that it's got this photoreceptor on it to guide the gallina through the water to where the light is at its strongest. This is an example of just one structure which demonstrates irreducible complexity. Every part of that little motor that drives this organism, and there's other single-celled organisms that also have this kind of little motor structure in slightly different forms that use it to power it through water. There's other waterborne single-celled organisms that are similar. They are irreducibly complex. If you change or modify any one part of it, it won't work. And the theory of evolution would suggest that each individual part of this would have had to have evolved separately, but in such a way that they come together at the end to work. And this is what Charles Darwin describes as being something that would debunk his theory of evolution, that it would break down, that it wouldn't work in that situation. And we see it here with the flagellum that rotates with that motor. So I hope that makes sense. You're going to be doing a little microscope project where you will be able to, where you're going to study the history of the microscope, how it developed, the discoveries and the key people involved in that. So thank you so much.